What if I told you that the most advanced pickup truck ever built sold only 4 units in its first year? Not 4,000, not 400, 4. Meanwhile, just a decade later, trucks were rolling off assembly lines with 450 pound-feet of torque and enough horsepower to embarrass muscle cars. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into the most fascinating 20-year period in pickup truck history. We're talking about the incredible journey from the brilliant engineering failures of the 1960s to the absolute powerhouse monsters of the 1970s. You see, the 1960s were like the mad scientist era of truck building. Engineers were throwing everything at the wall: rotary engines, side-loading ramps, trucks that could literally do wheelies by accident. Most of these innovations were so far ahead of their time that they flopped harder than a fish on dry land. But here's the beautiful irony. Those failures laid the groundwork for the 1970s, when American truck manufacturers finally figured out what people actually wanted: raw, unadulterated power. Today, we're going to explore how the innovative misfits of the 60s evolved into the muscle-bound legends of the 70s. We'll discover trucks with features so advanced they wouldn't become mainstream for decades, and then see how that engineering brilliance transformed into the golden age of truck muscle. So buckle up, because we're about to take a ride through automotive history that'll change how you look at every pickup truck on the road today. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why some of these forgotten trucks are now worth more than most people's houses. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we've got some absolutely mind-blowing truck content coming your way every week. All right, let's jump into our time machine and head back to the 1960s, when truck engineers apparently had access to some really good coffee and absolutely zero market research. Picture this. It's 1964, and a small Japanese company decides to challenge the American pickup market. Their weapon? The Toyota Stout, a truck so over-engineered it made Swiss watches look sloppy. This thing had a 1.9-liter inline-4 that was essentially bulletproof. Toyota engineers had taken their obsession with reliability and cranked it up to 11. The result? An engine that could run forever with minimal maintenance. The problem? American buyers in 1964 wanted chrome, V8s, and style. Toyota was basically trying to sell smartphones to people who wanted flip phones. But get this, the Stout had independent front suspension when most American trucks were still using solid axles. It had a curved windshield that eliminated vent windows, a feature that wouldn't become common on American trucks for another decade. This truck was so far ahead of its time, it was practically from the future. The tragic irony: every lesson Toyota learned from the Stout's spectacular failure went directly into developing the Hilux. And we all know how that story ended. The Tacoma has been America's best-selling mid-size truck for years. Now, if you thought the Stout was crazy, wait until you hear about Mazda's contribution to automotive insanity. In 1974, during the oil crisis, when everyone was trying to make their trucks more fuel efficient, Mazda engineers said, "Hold our sake," and stuffed a rotary engine into a pickup truck. This wasn't just any rotary. This was a 1.3-liter 13B with 4 carburetors that could rev to 7,000 RPM. Let that sink in. 7,000 RPM in a pickup truck in 1974. Most American trucks of the era started floating valves around 4,500 RPM. The repu was smooth as silk, while every other small truck vibrated like an unbalanced washing machine full of bricks. This thing hummed like a sewing machine, a very thirsty sewing machine that drank premium gas like it was going out of style. Mazda actually sold over 14,000 of these things in the first year. During an oil crisis, people were literally buying rotary-powered trucks while waiting in gas lines. It was beautiful madness. But if you want to talk about engineering insanity, we need to discuss the Chevrolet Corvair 95 Rampside. Take a rear-engined economy car, shorten the wheelbase, move the driver over the front wheels, add a pickup bed with a side-loading ramp, and pray the whole thing doesn't tip over backwards. The genius was that side ramp. It could swing down at a 22-degree angle and support 1,000 pounds. You could roll heavy equipment right into the middle of the bed. No lifting, no straining, just roll it up the ramp. But here's the crazy part. Empty, the front end was so light that steering felt like a suggestion rather than a command. In crosswinds, driving a ramp side was like sailing a very ugly boat. And get this, without the 165-pound weight Chevy added under the rear of the bed, panic stops could cause the rear wheels to leave the ground. Yes, you read that right. This truck could do stoppies. Now here's the truck that didn't just make our list. It accidentally invented an entire vehicle category. The International Scout 80 wasn't trying to be revolutionary, it was just trying to be useful. International's brief was simple: create something Jeep-sized but actually useful as a truck. What they created was the template for every SUV on the road today. The Scout had removable everything: doors, roof, windshield, rear seat. You could configure it as a bare-bones work truck on Monday and a family hauler on Sunday. It was transformable in a way that wouldn't become common until Jeep copied the idea decades later with the Wrangler. International thought they might sell 10,000 units per year. They sold over 100,000 in the first 5 years. They'd accidentally created the recreational 4x4 market. Here's what's fascinating about all these 1960s trucks. They were solving problems that didn't exist yet, or at least problems that Americans didn't know they had. Independent suspension, rotary engines, modular design, side-loading capabilities. These were all brilliant solutions looking for the right market timing. The 1960s truck engineers were like time travelers who'd seen the future, but couldn't explain it to anyone. They knew what trucks needed to become, but the market wasn't ready to listen. But here's the beautiful part. Every single one of these failures taught the industry valuable lessons that would pay off big time in the next decade. Welcome to the 1970s, folks, when American truck manufacturers finally figured out what people actually wanted, and boy, did they deliver. If the 60s were about engineering innovation, the 70s were about pure, unadulterated power. Let's start with the 1973 Ford F-250, the truck that introduced the famous dent side design. Now that name might sound like a dental procedure, but it was actually a stroke of styling genius. Those inverted dent lines along the body didn't just look cool, they added structural rigidity. But here's where it gets interesting. While the base model came with a respectable 300 cubic inch inline six making 117 horsepower, Ford offered something special for those who needed real muscle: the 460 cubic inch V8. This beast pumped out 245 horsepower and 380 pound-feet of torque. To put that in perspective, that's more torque than many modern V8s produce. This wasn't just a work truck. This was a statement that Ford was serious about the performance truck market. And get this, Ford offered 16 different colors. 16! They understood that trucks weren't just tools anymore. They were expressions of personality. Now, if you want to talk about trucks with attitude, we need to discuss the 1976 Dodge Warlock. This wasn't just a truck. This was Dodge's middle finger to conventional truck design. Part of Dodge's Adult Toys series. Yes, that was a real marketing campaign. The Warlock came in bold, eye-catching colors: black, red, and green, with a black interior featuring gold accents and gold pinstriping along the exterior. Under the hood, you could get the base 225 cubic inch slant six. But the real party started with the 360 cubic inch V8, pumping out 175 horsepower and 285 pound-feet of torque. This was Dodge saying, your truck doesn't have to be boring. The Warlock was so popular that what started as a limited edition became a regular model from 1977 to 1979. It captured the adventurous spirit of 70s truck culture perfectly. Chevrolet's answer to the power truck wars was the C20 Longhorn, and they went big. This beast featured an extended 8.5-foot bed and a 133-inch wheelbase compared to the standard 127 inches. When Chevy said Longhorn, they meant business. The base engine was a 250 cubic inch inline six with 145 horsepower. But here's where it gets exciting. The optional 402 cubic inch V8 delivered a hefty 300 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. Think about that. 400 pound-feet of torque in 1971. This thing could tow a house and still have power left over for the weekend camping trip. Now here's where Ford got really creative. The 1970 Ranchero wasn't technically a pickup truck. It was Ford's brilliant answer to the question, what if we combine the utility of a truck with the comfort of a car? Available in 4 models, from the luxurious Squire with simulated wood siding to the sporty GT, Ford created options for every taste and budget. But here's the kicker. The top-tier Cobra Jet V8 delivered 370 horsepower and an absolutely insane 450 pound-feet of torque. 450 pound-feet. In 1970, this thing had more torque than most modern performance cars. With only 2,640 units produced, the 1970 Ranchero became an instant collectible. But if you want to talk about the ultimate 70s power truck, we need to discuss the 1978 Dodge Midnight Express. This is the holy grail of 70s trucks. Only about 200 units were ever produced. Finished in sleek black paint with chrome exhaust stacks and gold pinstriping, this truck was Dodge's answer to drivers seeking a truck with serious attitude. Under the hood sat the legendary 440 cubic inch V8, delivering 225 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. This wasn't just a truck. This was automotive art. The Midnight Express was part of the late 70s trend toward personal use trucks, vehicles that offered style and fun alongside utility. Its exclusivity and bold aesthetic have made it one of Dodge's most collectible trucks. Here's what's amazing about the 70s truck scene. Manufacturers finally understood that Americans wanted power, style, and utility. The engineering lessons learned from the 60s failures had been absorbed and transformed into commercial success. These weren't just work trucks anymore. They were lifestyle statements, performance vehicles, and expressions of American automotive muscle culture. The 70s proved that when you combine innovative engineering with raw power and bold styling, magic happens. These trucks didn't just haul cargo, they hauled America into a new era of truck enthusiasm. Now here's where this story gets absolutely fascinating, truck fans. The journey from the innovative misfits of the 60s to the muscle monsters of the 70s wasn't just about adding bigger engines. It was about the entire industry learning what American truck buyers actually wanted. Think about this transformation. In 1964, Toyota couldn't sell 4 Stouts because Americans thought trucks were just tools. By 1970, Ford was building Rancheros with 450 pound-feet of torque because trucks had become expressions of personality. What changed? Everything. The 1960s taught manufacturers that Americans weren't ready for pure efficiency and reliability. They wanted power, style, and attitude. The 70s delivered all 3 in spades. Here's the brilliant part. The engineering innovations of the 60s didn't disappear. They evolved. Remember that independent front suspension from the Toyota Stout that nobody cared about in 1964? By the early 70s, it was becoming standard equipment on performance trucks. The Dodge A100's torsion bar suspension, that technology migrated to muscle trucks, giving them better handling to match their increased power. The International Scout's modular design philosophy, that became the template for the entire SUV market that would explode in the following decades. The 70s power wars were absolutely insane. Manufacturers were stuffing increasingly massive engines into trucks like they were trying to break the laws of physics. Ford's 460 cubic inch V8, Dodge's 440 cubic inch Monster, Chevrolet's 402 big block. These weren't just engines, they were statements of intent. But here's what's really wild. These engines weren't just about bragging rights. The torque figures were genuinely useful. That 450 pound-feet from the Ranchero Cobra Jet, that could pull a boat, a trailer, or your buddy's broken-down Camaro without breaking a sweat. The 70s also marked the moment when truck styling went from purely functional to absolutely gorgeous. The Dodge Warlock's black and gold theme, the Midnight Express's sinister elegance, the F-250's dense-eye design, these trucks were rolling sculptures. Manufacturers finally understood that truck buyers wanted their vehicles to look as good as they performed. Chrome exhaust stacks, bold graphics, custom paint schemes. The 70s truck was as much about making a statement as hauling a load. Perhaps the most significant evolution was in how Americans viewed trucks themselves. The 60s innovations like the Scout's removable panels and the Corvair's clever loading solutions had planted a seed. Trucks could be fun. By the 70s, that seed had grown into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Trucks weren't just for farmers and contractors anymore. They were for anyone who wanted power, capability, and style all in one package. Every failed innovation from the 60s found new life in the 70s. The Stout's reliability focus became the foundation for Japanese truck success. The Repu's smooth power delivery influenced automatic transmission development. The Ramside's loading innovations evolved into modern truck bed accessories. The Scout's modularity became the SUV template. The 60s weren't failures. They were expensive research and development that paid off massively in the following decade. Now here's where this story gets really mind-blowing, folks. Every single truck on the road today owes something to these vintage legends we've been discussing. Look at today's Ford F-150. That aluminum body construction and advanced suspension, that's the direct descendant of the engineering philosophy that started with those overbuilt 1960s experiments. The modern F-150's 450 horsepower EcoBoost V6, it's making the same power as that legendary Ranchero Cobra jet, but with better fuel economy than the Stout's four-cylinder. Remember how the International Scout accidentally created the recreational 4x4 market? Well, that accident became a trillion-dollar industry. Every Jeep Wrangler, Ford Bronco, and Chevrolet Tahoe on the road today is following the template the Scout established in 1960. The removable doors on a modern Wrangler? That's pure Scout DNA. The modular design of modern SUVs? Scout innovation. The idea that utility vehicles can be fun? Thank the Scout. Today's trucks are making power that would have seemed impossible in the 70s. The Ram TRX's 702 horsepower, the Ford F-150 Raptor R's 700 horsepower, the Chevrolet Silverado ZR2's advanced suspension. These are the spiritual successors to those 70s muscle trucks. But here's the beautiful part. They're doing it with better fuel economy, lower emissions, and more reliability than those vintage legends ever dreamed of. Here's the ultimate irony. Many of those failed 1960s trucks are now worth more than most people's houses. A clean Toyota Stout can sell for $50,000 plus. A Mazda Repu can hit $30,000. And don't even get me started on what a Dodge Midnight Express brings at auction. The market has finally recognized what those engineers knew all along. These trucks were ahead of their time, not behind it. And here's where it gets really interesting. We're seeing the same pattern today with electric trucks. The Ford Lightning, Rivian R1T, and Chevrolet Silverado EV are facing the same skepticism that the Stout and Repu faced in their day. Will electric trucks be the failures of the 2020s that become the legends of the 2040s? History suggests they just might be. So there you have it, truck enthusiasts. The incredible journey from the brilliant failures of the 1960s to the muscle-bound legends of the 1970s, and how both eras shaped the trucks we drive today. What we've learned is that innovation without market timing often looks like failure, but those failures plant the seeds for future success. The Toyota Stout's 4-unit sales year led to the Tacoma's decades of dominance. The Scout's accidental SUV creation became a trillion-dollar market. The Repu's rotary experiment influenced modern engine development. The 70s proved that when you combine innovative engineering with raw power and bold styling, you create legends that people still talk about 50 years later. Every time you see a crew cab pickup, thank the International Travalet. Every time you appreciate smooth truck power delivery, thank the Mazda Repu. Every time you load cargo through a modern truck's innovative bed features, thank the Corvair Ramside. You're experiencing the legacy of these vintage legends. And as we move into the electric truck era, remember, today's skeptics said the same things about rotary engines in trucks, independent suspension on work vehicles, and the idea that trucks could be fun. Innovation always faces resistance, but the best ideas eventually find their time. Here's what I want you to do. Next time you see a vintage truck at a car show or cruise night, don't just look at it as an old vehicle. Look at it as a piece of automotive DNA that's still influencing truck design today. These weren't just trucks. They were experiments in what transportation could become. The story of 1960s innovation and 1970s muscle proves that the best automotive legends aren't just about power or style or innovation alone. They're about the perfect combination of engineering ambition, market timing, and cultural readiness. Those engineers in the 60s weren't wrong. They were just early. The muscle truck builders of the 70s weren't just throwing big engines at everything. They were responding to a market that had finally figured out what it wanted. And that's the beautiful thing about truck culture. It's always evolving, always pushing boundaries, and always surprising us with what's possible when innovation meets passion. Don't forget to smash that like button if you enjoyed this deep dive into truck history. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because we've got more incredible automotive stories coming your way. What's your favorite truck from this era? Are you team 1960s innovation or 1970s muscle? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want to see more content like this, check out our playlist of classic truck deep dives. Trust me, once you start learning about these automotive legends, you'll never look at trucks the same way again. Until next time, keep those wheels turning and those engines roaring.